What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm back from my quasi vacation. I'm at 100%. I'm fully rested, and I'm ready to hit the NFL offseason fully running. The Combine is only a few days away, and we got to discuss Shedeur Sanders' decision to not throw at this event, something that isn't new. We've seen plenty of first-round quarterbacks not throw at the Combine in the past. Last year, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels did it, but they didn't get any criticism for it. But yet, Shedeur Sanders, he's scared to throw at the Combine because he knows he's going to get exposed. He knows he's not that good. I'm sick and tired of the weird double standard around Shedeur Sanders. No matter what he does, he always gets criticized for it. No matter what. The dude could sneeze the wrong way and he's getting hate for it. And I'm just sick and tired of it. And I just got to say my piece for the final time about how I feel his NFL career is going to pan out and why the discourse around him is just so unfair and unjustified. Another storyline that we're going to talk about is Myles Garrett. During the Combine, that's when a lot of blockbuster trades happen. Last year when Brian Burns got traded from the Panthers to the Giants, the Combine is initially where that trade took place at. Myles Garrett, over these last couple of days, the sweepstakes for him has started to heat up. The Buffalo Bills have been gaining a lot of steam to acquire him as of late. Would getting him be a good move? Could he finally get them over the hump? Or would they be repeating a similar mistake that they've already made with Vonn Miller? And then I got a few wide receivers the Steelers must aggressively target in free agency. The Chargers and the Broncos are not that far away from being Super Bowl contenders. And I got predictions for where the top free agent quarterbacks are going to land. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the pinned comment and description down below. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy, and let's dive into it. Over the last couple of years, we've seen plenty of first-round quarterbacks decide not to throw at the Combine. Last year, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May didn't throw at this event, and they didn't get any pushback for it. But yet, Shedeur Sanders decides he doesn't want to throw at the Combine. He just wants to go for interviews. He wants to save throwing for the pro day, and yet somehow he's scared of competition. He's scared to get exposed because he knows he's not that good. Shedeur Sanders is being held to a weird double standard that is unfair and unjust only because of his last name. The folks that grew up hating on Deion Sanders can't separate their hate for Deion from Shedeur. And they're taking it out on him with how they report on his decisions. And it's just really annoying. And I feel like it's really crappy reporting and shitty journalism. It's one thing to report on somebody that continues to make bad decisions. But every time Shedeur Sanders makes a decision pertaining to his career, there's always this large crowd on social media, this large group of reporters that finds a way to spin it into this weird narrative to try to crap on his character. Throughout Shedeur Sanders' time at Colorado and Jackson State, he didn't get into a single incident off the field that resulted in him getting arrested, doing any severe crimes, missing any games due to suspensions. This dude was a model citizen off the field. Yeah, he got into a few spats on social media with teammates, but so what? Jalen Carter got drafted in the top 10, and he got into a car accident, or he was racing a teammate that led to a car accident that ultimately led to him passing away. But yet, when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, though, we're attacking his character like he's one of the biggest cancers to ever come into the NFL. I'm just really annoyed with the discourse around Shedeur Sanders. It's one thing to criticize his game, but a lot of the criticisms of Shedeur are personal. Let's be honest about it. You didn't like Deion Sanders because he was cocky, he was in your face, and he was successful. You're waiting for the perfect opportunity for Deion to either fall flat or for his sons to fall flat so you can use that to finally get your hate off that you weren't able to get off because Deion was always keeping your mouth closed when he was dominating as an athlete. You know, I'm just really flabbergasted of the new stupid narratives people continue to paint about Shedeur Sanders' character that is just false. Stick to the facts. The brother never got arrested. He never got caught doing anything that he had no business doing. He's a human just like you and me. You ain't perfect. I ain't perfect. I just heard a report come out about James Pierce Jr. having some anger issues. Why is nobody talking about that? Why is Shedeur Sanders the only person that always gets the spotlight magnified on him? You want to say that he only gets hyped up because of his last name. Why is it that he always gets so much hate compared to any other draft prospect out there? Come on now. Let's just keep it 100. Just say you don't like Shedeur Sanders and you don't think he's going to succeed because of your inability to separate your hatred for his pops from him. Just be honest about it. There's a lot of immaturity when it comes to talking about Shedeur. People just can't keep their personal feelings out of their professional evaluations of the guy. I really don't understand why there's so much hate around somebody that did nothing but elevate a dead program. He brought that Boulder community the best moments they've had in decades. I really wish I had an answer for why the Shedeur Sanders hate is just such a popular thing, but I really don't. It's just really weird the infatuation people have at hating on, nepotism babies like Bronny James, Shedeur Sanders, Shiloh. They haven't done nothing to you. They haven't done anything wrong but just, do well to advance to the next level. During the combine this week, expect the Myles Garrett sweepstakes to heat up. The Buffalo Bills are one of the rumored teams who are allegedly the front runners to acquire him in a potential trade. And I want to discuss if Buffalo should even trade for Myles Garrett. And before you say, oh, it's a no-brainer, Buffalo should trade for Myles Garrett, whatever it takes to get him, let me ask you this. Do you think trading for Myles Garrett would be the Bills repeating the same mistake that they just made with Vonn Miller when he was coming off that Super Bowl win with the LA Rams and they gave him that massive contract in free agency? It was thought that he could bounce back to that level that he was in his prime with the Broncos, although he was up there in age at 33 at the time he signed that deal. And he hasn't been able to live up to the expectations. He hasn't been bad, but he definitely hasn't been the player the Bills thought they were going to get when they gave him that massive contract. And it looks like he might end up being a potential cap casualty due to him not really performing up to those standards that was expected that came with that deal. Myles Garrett, if you trade for him, is it another situation where the Buffalo Bills are once again giving up a lot of assets or a lot of money to a guy that is going to quickly fall off due to old age? Myles Garrett currently is 29. He turns 30 at the near end of this year. How many prime years of high-level football does Myles Garrett still have left in the tank? Would it be enough to justify the Buffalo Bills giving up 2-3 first-round picks potentially, along with a few other second-round picks to go along with it? I think so. The Buffalo Bills at this point You have nothing to lose by trading for Myles Garrett. Don't give me that nonsense about we need to build through the draft. Building through the draft has gotten the Buffalo Bills nowhere defensively. They haven't drafted a Pro Bowl caliber player in the first round on defense in 7 years. Their last Pro Bowler on defense that they drafted was Tremaine Edmonds. Myles Garrett would be a better player than anybody the Buffalo Bills could use any first round capital on in the next 3 draft classes. Right now, Myles Garrett is the best player in the NFL. He has had double-digit sacks every single season since his second year in the league. The brother continues to get better the older he gets. And with Myles Garrett being a Hall of Fame caliber player, he regresses at a slower rate than your average player at the position. He still has about 4 or 5 years of elite football left in him. Khalil Mack put up a 17-sack season last year at the age of 31, 32 years old. And the difference between Myles Garrett trading for him versus when Buffalo signed Vonn Miller in free agency is that Myles Garrett, if you trade for him right now, you're getting him at 29 years old. You signed Vonn Miller at 33. A lot of us had a feeling that Vonn Miller contract was not going to age well. There was a lot of criticism around it. If you're a Bills fan, you remember there were a lot of people at your neck saying that you overpaid for Vonn because he definitely didn't look like the same player during that Super Bowl run with the Rams that he looked like during his glory days with the Broncos. And coming off an ankle injury as well that sidelined him for all of the previous season, didn't help his cause neither. There were a lot of red flags that the Bills ignored about Vonn Miller out of desperation because they truly felt they had to get a difference maker at that point, and they felt Vonn Miller was that guy who could be that key piece to get them past Kansas City. But just because that didn't work out how you planned doesn't mean that you don't roll the dice again. Nobody wins in the NFL by trying to be conservative. You are not that good drafting defense in the first round. You draft offense incredibly well in the early rounds of the draft, but you always whiff on first round picks on defense. Ed Oliver is probably the best first rounder that you drafted. Kaiir Elam is a bust. The guy can't even be a backup on the majority of teams. He's probably going to be playing in the UFL next year. You have no choice if you are the Buffalo Bills to give up anything that's required to get Myles Garrett on your doggone team. You are right there at this point. You need to get all the superstars you can get to get you over that hump. This is your window. You're not going to have all eternity to win the Super Bowl. You got to strike when Josh Allen is still in his prime. You don't want to wait for Josh Allen to fall off, his body falls apart, and then all of a sudden you want to try to go all in on winning now. If you have an opportunity to get a player like a Myles Garrett, you go get him. There isn't no such thing as finding good value when you're trading for one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. Literally. I don't give a hoot about who you could get in the draft. Nobody that you're going to spend any of those first round picks that you will use to trade for Myles Garrett is going to be a better player than him. They're not. What's the odds that you draft 3 Hall of Fame level players with your next 3 first round picks? Pretty slim to none, especially with your history on defense. F those picks, man. The Buffalo Bills, they're lacking elite players on defense. Myles Garrett would fix 2 of their biggest issues that they had last season. First of all, he's going to beef up the interior of that defensive line because when you stunt him, when you have him moving from the outside, coming in, rushing the middle of the offensive line, that's going to help Buffalo's interior D-line improve. You also, with Myles Garrett, are going to be better at having a more consistent pass rush in the fourth quarter of games. You got Gregory Rousseau, you got AJ Epinesa. Those guys are solid pass rushers, but they're not elite pass rushers. They are not guys that are always going to win one-on-one all the time against opposing offensive linemen. With Myles Garrett, though, You add him to this defense, that's going to really help AJ Epinesa and Gregory Rousseau elevate their game to the next level. Right now, AJ Epinesa is stuck around being a 6.5 sack guy. Gregory Rousseau, he looks like he could reach that ceiling where he could become a double-digit sack contributor. But getting Myles Garrett, though, would definitely speed up that process. Yeah, you have some cap issues right now, but you can figure that out. You got a really good general manager. You got a great front office. You got a great organization. At this point, the Bills need to get all of the superstar players that they have money to get if they're available. You are right there. The Ravens didn't have to get Derrick Henry. They were already dominating running the football without him. But they went and got him anyway because you can never have too many great football players. Stop trying to be cheap all the time. No matter how conservative you try to be building a team the most feasible way financially, you're still going to have a few gambles you're going to have to make with certain contracts. Rather, if it's, banking on a guy like a Zach Bond with the Philadelphia Eagles to be a good contributor for you who hasn't really had that much experience being a starter in the past, or if it's, being able to get the most out of guys that you draft. It's just the Buffalo Bills, the difference between them, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles is that they do a poor job of drafting on the defensive side of the football. That's why they have to trade for Myles Garrett. If you're not going to get it right in the draft, you might as well go ahead and get an already proven commodity. Even if Myles Garrett somewhat regresses, what does a regressed Myles Garrett look like? Is that still giving you 10, 12 sacks a season? Is that still somebody who's a contender every year for Defensive Player of the Year? At this point, I would be stacking all the chips possible to get Kansas City. It's not enough. No matter if you think it's enough, you need more, and you're not going to get that in the draft. You need guys who could help you reach the Super Bowl right now. There aren't too many rookies that can do that for you. And I don't know if your general manager is going to be able to sniff them out based off his history. Myles Garrett makes sense for Buffalo. It's not about trying to find the right value. It's not about not overpaying, not wanting to pay him. You're going to have to pay great players. Great players deserve to get paid for a reason. If you don't have great players, you're not going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl. There has never been a Super Bowl winning team that didn't have players that were top earners at their position. You're not going to have a Super Bowl contender where you have a whole roster comprised of guys on team-friendly contracts and rookie deals. This isn't Madden, guys. This is real life. The Bills need a superstar in defense. Myles Garrett is that piece that they possibly could get that could finally get them into the Super Bowl and finally holding up that Lombardi trophy. Outside of the Steelers' pressing need for a quarterback, they need wide receiver just as much. And I got a few wide receiver targets that the Steelers should aggressively pursue during free agency. Elijah Moore is the first wide receiver the Steelers should look to target. He's going to be somebody that can be a good fourth or third option in this offense. Yeah, he's not going to be a good number one and number two option, but he will be a dependable third option where he could be a good deep threat. He's really reliable in third down situations as well. He's been underutilized up to this point of his career. He hasn't had good quarterback play. He played with Zach Wilson with the Jets. He has played with Deshaun Watson and a carousel of other different quarterbacks in Cleveland. If the Steelers get a decent quarterback in here, you get a guy like Elijah Moore and you make him your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, he could be a really good bargain pickup for Pittsburgh. Amari Cooper, unlike Elijah Moore, is what the Steelers really need. You need somebody that can be a semi-wide receiver 1 or true number 2 on the opposite side of George Pickens. Yeah, Amari Cooper is up there in age. He's in his early 30s. He still is a really productive receiver. Prior to last year, he came off a 1,000-yard year with the Browns. He was seeking a contract extension before last season started, but the Browns ultimately said they weren't going to give him one, and they ended up trading him around the deadline to the Bills, and he didn't do much for Buffalo, but I think that was more due to him not knowing the offense that much and them kind of struggling to get him involved. He did have a good game against the Rams, but just remember, in 2023, last year, he caught 72 passes, over 1,200 receiving yards. You bring him into the Steel City with Elijah Moore, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth. The Steelers' passing attack will be drastically upgraded. And plus, you wouldn't have to give up too much to get any of these two players. You probably could get Amari Cooper for a 2-year deal around $18 million. I think that's pretty reasonable. And Elijah Moore, you can probably get him for a 1-year deal around $5-6 million. Now, if the Steelers want to go a more expensive direction, Chris Godwin. If you get Chris Godwin, though, you won't be able to have enough money to get Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore. At that point, you would just have to draft another wide receiver. You'll have to use that money elsewhere to address other positions, like getting another corner, improving the offensive line, adding more depth on the defensive line. Chris Godwin is not going to be cheap. He probably is going to be asking for anywhere around $25 to $28 million a year. He probably will want a 3-4 year deal. This is probably the last time in his career he ever is going to get a max contract. So if the Steelers go after Chris Godwin, he would be a great piece to this offense, because without a doubt, you're getting somebody that right now is better than both Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper. He probably is just as good as George Pickens in some capacity, but you will have two wide receiver ones on your offense. And George Pickens, now he will have a little bit of that burden taken off him. If you watched a lot of Steeler games, it was pretty apparent that teams were doing everything they could to sell out on stopping George Pickens. If you stop George Pickens, then the Steelers' offense was really inefficient. Adding Chris Godwin now will make things so much easier for whoever's going to be playing quarterback next year, and for Arthur Smith if he continues to call plays as the OC for the Steelers. Chris Godwin is a really good receiver. He's coming off an injury-riddled year, but I still feel he still has a few more good years left in him. He would be a good pickup for Pittsburgh, and the price tag, it would be a little bit hefty, but it definitely would be worth it. I wouldn't have any problem giving him $25, $28 million a year. He definitely gives you that kind of production when he's on the field. And Chris Olave. Chris Olave isn't available in free agency, but he has been rumored to be on the trade block. The Saints, they could be rebuilding. I think Chris Olave is the best receiver target the Steelers could possibly get this offseason. You won't have to give up a high draft pick to get him. You probably could get him for a second-round pick and a few other midday selections. Yeah, he is coming up on the end of his rookie deal, but I'd rather pay a guy like Chris Olave $26, $28 million a year that's younger than Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, and the same age as Elijah Moore than have to overspend for a guy like a Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs that's old, aging, and regressing. The Steelers need to go for the young upside. Chris Olave, he definitely gives you that. And in his short span in the league, he's been one of the more underrated receivers. He's a really good deep threat, has really good hands. I think he's pretty good after the catch as well. Before last year, he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I would love for the Steelers to get Chris Olave. This is definitely the wide receiver target that they need to prioritize the most out of them all, because he definitely is somebody that they could get for a really good bargain and not have to give up too many assets to acquire. The Chargers are in a great situation right now. If they can nail free agency in the draft, after this offseason ends, they could insert themselves into the Super Bowl conversation, and they could be rivaling the Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC West title potentially. We saw what this team did last year with the salary cap constraints they had, having a roster that wasn't that good. They didn't have a lot of playmakers on offense. Their two best offensive players outside of Justin Herbert was J.K. Dobbins and rookie wideout Ladd McConkey. That was about it. But they did have a lead offensive line, and the defense was tremendously improved last year from what it ever looked under Brandon Staley. With what the Chargers did last season, it set the stage for them to perfectly position themselves to make that jump from being a wild card team to a Super Bowl contender year 2 under Jim Harbaugh. They are 7th going into free agency and available cap space. They got $65 million to spend. You can use that to go after any of the top receivers on the market, or you can further booster up your defense. Maybe you get a younger pass rusher like a Josh Sweat. That would be a really good signing by the Chargers. There are so many different directions that the Chargers can go in free agency to where no matter what, they shouldn't come out of the free agency period nowhere close to what they looked like last year. This should be a more superiorly talented team in every single aspect this year than what they were last season. Last season, they severely overachieved year 1 under Jim Harbaugh, and it wasn't a surprise. I say they overachieved due to the talent level of that team. When you looked at that team on paper, they didn't really look like a playoff team. You just gave them the benefit of a doubt that they were going to get there due to Jim Harbaugh's resume. He's won everywhere that he's been. He won and went to 3 straight conference championships his first 3 years coaching the San Francisco 49ers, Super Bowl included during that span. The guy just is a winner. He's a brainiac when it comes to assembling winning football teams. And if the Chargers can nail free agency and they nail the draft right, which there's no reason why they shouldn't get the draft right. They nailed the draft last year. They had one of the best draft classes in the NFL. They had several draft picks that got meaningful playoffs, that got meaningful snaps last year. They had 2 cornerbacks that were starters for them for a good stretch during the season as well. So with how well they drafted last year, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to keep on getting their draft picks right this year. The Chargers right now perfectly have positioned themselves to take over the AFC West. This is the most vulnerable that the Chiefs dynasty has ever looked. We have questions at a lot of different positions about Kansas City. The offensive line is the biggest one. You're losing your best offensive lineman, Trey Smith. Are you going to be able to keep him? Or are you just going to have to let him walk and sign with somebody else in free agency? You have a bad offensive tackle situation, Jawan Taylor. You got to move on from him, but is it financially feasible for you to do it right now? Do you have to hold on to him for at least 1 more year? And what are you going to do to solve your left tackle situation? What are you going to do to make up for the loss of Travis Kelce? This is a great opportunity for the Chargers to really make a statement this offseason to show that Kansas City, we're at your neck now. You have some legitimate competition in this division, and no longer is going to be a cakewalk because we are just as good as what you are. We're ready to play now. You better be ready to play. And I truly believe that deep down, and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' heart, they know the Chargers are going to be a threat and the force to be reckoned with this season. That's why they know this offseason they have to approach it with a different level of urgency because they know Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, they're close. They're on their ass. They're not too far away from being Super Bowl contenders, and all they need is to crush this offseason, and they'll be right there. You know, another team that isn't too far away from being in Super Bowl contention, surprise, surprise, are the Denver Broncos. With how great Bo Nix looked as a rookie, in year 2 under Sean Payton, he could catapult the Broncos into contender status with him having an MVP level season. That's how good I expect Bo Nix to be in his second season with the Broncos. In year one, he ended this franchise 8-year playoff drought. He had 29 touchdowns through the air, only 12 interceptions, and during the second half of the season, he had one of the best stat lines in the league, 21-7 TD-INT ratio. He looked like the second coming of Drew Brees during the second part of last season. You really saw all of the attributes that made Sean Payton fall in love with Bo Nix. The athleticism, the ability to run around and extend plays, but also the accuracy. When Bo Nix was in rhythm and everything was clicking, I just saw a common copy of Drew Brees. I really thought that I was looking at Drew Brees Jr. out there somewhat, watching Bo Nix with the command that he had of the huddle, how in control of certain games that he was in. You know, like that Thursday night game against the New Orleans Saints. He was just going up and down the field with ease. And the Broncos, like the Chargers, they crushed their draft class last year. Now, their draft class wasn't as impressive as what the Eagles and the Rams were, but, you know, they hit on a few guys. Devon Vele was really good. You got a really good running back out of Notre Dame, Audric Estime. You got Trey Franklin, Bo Nix teammate at Oregon. So they've had a lot of rookies from last year's draft class and made major contributions for last year's squad. And even the draft class before that was really good. What Sean Payton has built in the Mile High City should have Broncos fans encouraged about how far away they are from being Super Bowl contenders, because you're not that far away. Believe it or not, depending on what you do this offseason, like I said earlier about the LA Chargers, you could be competing for the AFC West division along with the Chargers and the Chiefs also. This is the most vulnerable the Chiefs have ever looked. They got questions on the offensive line. Who's going to replace Travis Kelce? The Broncos don't really have any questions. The only question you have about Denver is, how are you going to continue to elevate? How are you going to build off a season where, again, like the Chargers, you overachieved? You were expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. You had an over-under win total of 5.5 wins, and yet you still find a way to sneak into the wild card round with a rookie quarterback that was presumed to be the worst of the bunch that was drafted in the first round last year. That's the testament to how great of a coach Sean Payton is and how promising of a future that this franchise has with Bo Nix at the helm. In free agency, you got money to spend. Last year, you couldn't really spend this much in free agency due to the big dead cap hit that you took to get rid of Russell Wilson. Well, now that's over, and you can finally get some superstar tier players on this offense around Bo Nix. Imagine if you can get a true RB1, or if you can get a Tyler Warren in the NFL draft to pair alongside with Bo Nix. This offense next year is going to be one of the best in the NFL. And that defense, yeah, they were already a top 10 unit last year. And they didn't really have a lot of household names. That unit could take an even bigger step in improvement from what they were last year with a good offseason. There's a lot of good linebackers in free agency that they could use. Beef up the interior of that D-line some more. There's a lot of reasons to be buying stock in the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix at the helm. Just the situation they have around them, the coaching, the overall structure and foundation of the organization is now set. The AFC West, the future of this division, I've never been more excited for. I think that this new era of the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty is going to be one that nobody really expected to see coming. But with the coaches we got in this division now, it's only a matter of time before it starts happening. And expect the Broncos, along with the Chargers, to be in the mix for the AFC West next season. The quarterback pool in free agency this year is not that good. If you are a fan of a quarterback-needy team, there's only a handful of quarterbacks to choose from that are actually capable starters. I want to give predictions for where I feel the top quarterbacks on the market are going to land, starting with Daniel Jones. He's going to be your typical quarterback that, he flamed out with his first team. He's going to be viewed as a reclamation project. If he goes to the right situation, lands in the hands of the right offensive coordinator with a decent supporting cast around him, he could be good enough to make you a solid team. And Indianapolis right now, with the situation that they're in with Anthony Richardson, bringing in Daniel Jones would be good competition for him. You'll have two quarterbacks that they both are really athletic. They're good running the football. Daniel isn't the athlete that Anthony Richardson is, but he definitely is a way better passer than what AR is. And getting Daniel Jones would be able to push Anthony Richardson, but at the same time, it wouldn't put enough pressure on him to where you feel like he has no shot at being able to win the starting job. And if Anthony Richardson doesn't end up beating out Daniel Jones has shown the ability to play good enough football to make you a playoff team if you're in a weak division. The AFC South is not that good. We don't know what the Jags, the Titans are going to be. We know the Texans should be a good team, but even they had their fair share of problems. The Colts got talent on offense. They got a decent offensive line, some good receivers, and Jonathan Taylor's a great back. You just need more consistent play at quarterback, and you could get that out of Daniel Jones with a very favorable deal in free agency as well. You could probably get him for a veteran minimum deal. Jameis Winston, I got him going to the New York Jets. They're going to cut Aaron Rodgers. We don't know how much money they're willing to spend to get a quarterback on the open market. There has been some reports that they are interested in trading up for Cam Ward. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get him. But even if you do draft a rookie quarterback, you would still want to bring in a veteran presence to be in that quarterback room. The quarterback market's not that good, guys. I tried to warn you guys at the start of this. Jameis Winston is probably either the fourth or fifth best quarterback out there that you could get. Yeah, he has a huge turnover issue, but at least you're going to be able to move the ball with Jameis Winston. I'll take a quarterback for a 2-year deal worth $18 million that he'll throw 20 interceptions, but he'll throw 28 touchdowns as well. He'll move the ball. You'll have a decent offense with Jameis Winston at quarterback. And with the pieces that the New York Jets already have in place on the offense, the offensive line is coming along. You got Elijah Vera Tucker. You got Aluf Ashanu, who looks pretty promising. That offensive line isn't too far off from being good. You got Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. You got to add some more talent there, but we know the defense is great. They have a good enough defense that with Aaron Glenn, they could overcome some of Jameis Winston's turnovers. Not all of them, but they could bail him out on a few occasions. But Jameis Winston is a great bridge quarterback to get the Jets by for just this season if they can't land a big-time guy in free agency or during the draft. Jameis Winston could keep you afloat. He can keep you competitive. If you got an offensive coordinator that can minimize his mistakes, he could be a really good bargain for you. Justin Fields, he's coming back to the black and gold. The Steelers aren't going to be able to get anybody else in the open market unless they are going to be ultra aggressive and they go after Sam Darnold, which is something that definitely is on the table for them. But it looks like they're going to run it back with Justin Fields. Mike Tomlin has been emphasizing the importance of having a quarterback with elite mobility. He seems to really be prioritizing that. He really wants that in his next signal caller. With the upside Justin Fields possesses, you already tried running it with a aging quarterback in Russell Wilson. You tried running it with a proven vet, and that didn't work out. Maybe try running it with the ultimate reclamation project. We saw Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and Baker Mayfield be able to revive their careers. Why can't Justin Fields do it? Before he got benched in favor of Russell Wilson, the Steelers were in first place in the AFC North. He had 10 total touchdowns, only 1 interception. He looked pretty solid. He looked way better playing for the Steelers, the brief action that he saw as a starter, than what he ever looked like in Chicago. He was a way better quarterback playing for the Steelers than he was playing for the Bears. Mike Tomlin, allowing him to get another season in Arthur Smith's system could help him develop even further. And it looks like Arthur Smith, he preferred Justin Fields over Russell Wilson. Him and Russ didn't get along that much. They tried to make it work, but it seems like Arthur Smith really feels like he could build an offense around Justin Fields. And if Mike Tomlin allows him to take the training wheels off of Justin, who knows? If you get a Geno Smith or a Sam Darnold kind of resurrection year out of Justin Fields, you mean to tell me that's not good enough for the Steelers to end their very long playoff drought? You know, where they don't have a playoff win? I think they could win a playoff game with good Justin Fields if he can give them capable quarterback play. The potential is there. It's just the inconsistency has halted them or halted his development. You know, you don't really know what he is at this point due to how up and down he's been. Some weeks he looks good, and some weeks, you know, he just doesn't get the ball out as quick as what he needs to. But with him sitting behind Russell Wilson for the majority of last year, maybe that's what he needed to help reboot his career. I got Russell Wilson staying in the AFC North, going to the Steelers' biggest in-division rival outside the Ravens, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, they don't have a lot of cap space. They don't really have any cap space at all. You're trying to re-sign Myles Garrett. So how are you going to improve the quarterback situation? Russell Wilson could be a very cheap option for you that could still give you somewhat capable quarterback play, since he would be a good fit in Kevin Stefanski's offense that's heavily predicated off play action and running the football. We saw Russell Wilson at times last year still have the ability to throw the football really well outside the numbers. He still was really good throwing the ball on the run. He's not the athlete that he used to be, but with the situation that the Browns are, you just need a quarterback that could somewhat keep you afloat. Russell Wilson could do that for you. He isn't going to lose you games, but he's not at the point of his career where he's going to win you a lot of games neither, if you're just asking him to do it all for you. But with Kevin Stefanski, the scheme that he has, and the players that they still have at running back and wideout, I still think that there's enough weapons around Russell Wilson to where he could work with the Browns somewhat. They might not be a playoff team, but you're not a laughingstock with Russell Wilson. And I got Sam Darnold going to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders got so much money to spend in free agency. It doesn't seem like they're going to dabble in trying to trade up for Shedeur or Cam Ward. They pretty much are out of it. But Sam Darnold is the best available quarterback on the market. You have just as much money as anybody to spend. Getting Sam Darnold would instantly make you competitive in the AFC West, in my opinion. Sam Darnold showed with the Minnesota Vikings with a good coaching staff, which is what he's going to have with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly as his OC. And if you can get some better receivers and an improved offensive line to go ground game to go along with the addition of Sam Darnold, you know he could be really good. Yeah, you do need more pieces around him to be good, but even if he isn't that good, you're still going to get somebody that's a serviceable starter for you. But if you really want to get the Sam Darnold that you saw in Minnesota, you got to give him a lot of weapons. You got the money to do so. So Sam Darnold, I expect him to end up being a Raider. And these are my predictions for where I see the top quarterbacks on the market heading in free agency. Drop your predictions. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys shortly with another episode tomorrow.